In the last lesson, we said that the ADF-NDB system had some quirks. Well, the biggest one is that compared to some other systems, parts of it are not user-friendly. You've got to think. But then you wouldn't want to be roaming around up there in your Skyhawk if you weren't thinking, now would you? And with just a little bit of thinking, this little black box will show you how to get somewhere. And that sure beats being nowhere. So that being the case, let's see about having the ADF tell us when we are somewhere. Suppose you're planning a cross-country flight. You've chosen a particular checkpoint along the course, and you notice a commercial broadcast station is depicted on the chart several miles off to one side. Aha, you astutely cry, I can use my ADF to help identify that checkpoint. Okay, with the natural skill of a born navigator, you slap your Cessna plotter on the chart, lay in a line, apply variation, and swiftly deduce a magnetic direction from the checkpoint to the station of 010 degrees. By definition, you have just determined magnetic bearing to the station. Obviously, you would like to know when you are crossing that line. So how do you do that? Easy. Just calculate what the relative bearing would be for that combination of magnetic heading and magnetic bearing to the station. Let's say you're making good your course using a magnetic heading of 225, and you want to know when you'll cross the magnetic bearing 010 degrees to the station. Just use our handy formula and solve it this time for relative bearing. That becomes magnetic bearing 2 minus magnetic heading equals relative bearing. If you plug in the numbers and turn the crank, 010 degrees minus 225 degrees equals, oh no, we're headed for a negative. Well, no problem. Just add 360 to the smaller number, which is 010, and it becomes the larger number. Now, 370 minus 225 leaves 145. So when the ADF needle points to 145 and your heading is exactly 225, you're crossing the 010 degree magnetic bearing to the station. All right, one final permutation. Gee, I like that word. Suppose now you want to intercept an inbound bearing of 270 degrees, and you decide that a relative bearing of about 45 degrees will allow you to make the turn easily when you get to the intercept point. So what heading should you fly? Once more, tumble the equation around, and you'll discover that magnetic bearing 2 minus relative bearing equals magnetic heading. That's 270 minus 45. So the magnetic heading you need is 225 degrees. You'd fly that as carefully as you could until you nearly had a relative bearing of 45 degrees, and then you'd start your turn to 270. With this kind of situation, it's helpful to make a rough sketch of where you are and where you want to be first, then pick out a relative bearing. Now, if you can make that sketch, you must know you're somewhere. And that sure beats being nowhere every time.